Yeah, man, we're going to look at some biblical location on the live Google map in Africa, proving that the scripture that we receive are what you would call a African narrative, their culture, custom, and practices. It's all about Africa. In fact, it's all about us. If you can remember well, if you're someone who read the scripture and have a good memory, like I'm going to try and go off my memory. I might not give you the verses and stuff like that. But when you look at Genesis 12, where I think it's Terah took Abraham, Lot, and their wives, and they were heading to Canaan. Now the direction they were heading at the time, coming from Babylon, what's the other name? The land of the Chaldeans. They were heading south. Maybe I can find that on the Bible. Yeah. Let me check here. Give me a minute or two. Let it load up. Good. Yeah, so we're gonna find the passage. That's Genesis chapter 12. I said go when you have free stuff, them run a lot of ads. So it's Genesis chapter 12. I don't remember the exact verse. But here we see, let's read from verse 1. And I don't use Lord and God. I use Sunini and Nini. According to my understanding. We can cut the chase and go to verse 9. Where it says, and this is Genesis 12, verse 9. It says, and Abram journeyed, going on still towards the south. You can backtrack and go to verse 5. It says, and Abram took Sarah his wife and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran, and they went forth to go into the land of Canaan. And into the land of Canaan they came. Verse 9 says, even after they enter into the land of Canaan, the scripture says, and Abram journeyed going on still towards the south. So while they were in Canaan, he continued to go south. Now let us take a look at the map. A lot of persons claim that Babylon is Iran. Or rather, is it Iran? Iraq? Good, sorry about that. Iraq. Now, going south from Iraq would lead one into Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia has never been thought to be the land of Canaan. So if the Bible is right and the direction is right, if here Iraq is the homeland of Abraham, going south would take him into Saudi Arabia. And while he's in Saudi Arabia, he goes on further into the south. Now the farthest you can get into the south, and this landmass, is Yemen. Or if they didn't enter into Yemen, then they would be on the outskirts of Saudi Arabia, border between Yemen and Saudi Arabia. But none of that came up in the conversation to say um, the promised land is Saudi Arabia or Yemen or any such thing. But there's a controversy, or rather the claim that Israel, this little strip here, is the promised land, which is really not true. I can tell you from the outset. Because it's a good land. It's not a barren land. It's a land that flows with milk and honey, which means it's prosperous. It is rich, you know. And this place is not that place. It doesn't fit that description. So let me just cut to the chase and forget about that, because none of that is true. I can tell you from the onset, and I'll prove it here. Sukkot is somewhere here. Pardon me for not having it to show here, but in due season I will find it and show you. So they were in Egypt, remember, after the famine. You can go back into the scripture where there's a famine. And it says in verse 10, and there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down into Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was grievous. So he went down into Egypt. So he was in Egypt because of the famine, and they were there for a while until in Genesis 13. Now we're going to use Egypt as the landmark of Abraham's journey. So we forget all about Asia. You know, Asia doesn't come into question hereafter. So look at this now. Genesis chapter 13. In verse 1, the scripture says, and Abram went up. Take very special note of the word up. Out of Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him into the south. So they were in, So verse 1 says, I hope you can see the scripture well, the verse. All right, just take out your scripture and look at it. It says that Abraham went up out of Egypt, he and his wife, and Lot, and all that he had, and Lot with him, into the south. So south of Egypt is further into the continent of Africa. When facing a map, the right is east, the left is west. What you would consider up here at the top of the map would be north, and the bottom would be south. So Abraham, leaving Egypt, went south. Follow the cursor. South. And if we should reference the scripture, and he went on his journey from the south. Well, they use the word from the south. Bear in mind verse 1. Unto a place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai. Alright, so I'm going to show you now, using the Google map, proving that it's the land of Africa, and that he indeed went south. Watch this now. Now we want to find Bethel and Ai. Alright, let us look here now. This is Ai. Between Bethel and Ai. I hope you can see it. I hope it's let me see how much I can zoom it in. That's Ai. That's on the continent of Africa. Oh no. What is this? Yeah, that's Ai. And that's on the continent of Africa. Mark it now. What is happening here? Needs to focus. There seems to be some issue with my camera. However, as you can see, this is on the continent of Africa. There we have Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, and AI is right here, as you can see. Alright, so I'm going to look for Bethel now. Where is Bethel? That's a Maun, Cave of Maun, Limpopo. That's Gaza province. Let me see. Okay. That's Bethel. Oh. So Abraham was between here. Somewhere here. And we're going to find out. Where is Bethel? That is Bethel. Now, remember, when you go back to the scripture, so we're going to use geographical location to prove that indeed Abraham was on the continent of Africa. And when he was coming from the land of the Chaldeans, he wasn't coming from Iraq, because before he went into Egypt, where he was coming from, he was heading south. But south from where? We're going to go into that later. But coming from Iraq, going south, would land him in Saudi Arabia or as far as Yemen. This is Yemen here. Good. And none of those countries were ever considered to be the promised land, the land of Canaan. But we hear of this little strip here, Israel, being Canaan's land, which is not true. And that is what I am trying to prove here. Now remember, when you read the scripture, verse 10 of chapter 13 said, and this is after they were having this dispute that Abraham herdsmen and Lot's herdsmen, they were having some dispute and they decided to part. And Abraham, as you probably well know about the story, so to speak, Abraham said, Lot, choose where you want to be, and I'll go the other direction. And it's a Lot, verse 10 said, and Lot lifted up his eyes and beheld all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere. Now, Jordan, we're going to look at the map and see where Jordan is. Good. Jordan, there's somewhere here. Let me see. Jordan. All right, this is Jordan. Here we are. Jordan River. This is the Jordan River. So this is where Lot and Abraham was at the time, and would place Ai on the east, or on their left, and Bethel on their right, or more to the west. Let me see if I can find back Bethel. Good. So Bethel would be on their, let me see, that's not Bethel, that's Bethlehem. All of those places, we'll deal with that later. That's Bethel. So Bethel would be on his west, or on his right. So Abraham was in the general area here when Lot and him, having that issue. regarding the dispute between their herdsmen, right? And so Bethel would be on Bethel, and then we have Ai. Not there. Ai would be further up. Here is Ai, right? Ai in Tanzania, border between Tanzania and Kenya. No, that's where they were, at Jordan. But it didn't stop there. Yes, it says in verse 18. Now let us read verse 14. It said, and Sunanani said unto Abram, after Lot was separated from him, lift up now thine eyes and look from the place where thou art, northward, southward, eastward, and westward. Which means it encompasses all those areas where Bethel, where Ai, and beyond. As we go on further, you will see the exact border of the promised land within the continent of Africa. Verse 18 says, we're going to jump to 18. Then Abraham removed his tent and came and dwelt in the plain of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and built there an altar unto Sunanani. So we want to find the next place, Mamre, where Abraham settled, right? Remember, all along Abraham is going south. Now look here, Mamre, Cape Town, South Africa. So there's something I want to highlight here before I go any further, because we're going to find Hebron as well. Remember, the scripture used the word, and Abraham went up out of Egypt, he and his wife, up. During the famine in chapter 12, it says, verse 10, and there was a famine in the land, and Abraham went down. Notice down. And when they were coming back out, the scripture says that he went up out of Egypt. The reason for that is the further you're going on the continent from this direction, you're going into a higher elevation. Higher elevation to the tip of South Africa. Right? The southern part of Africa, all from here coming this side, is at a higher elevation than Egypt. That's why they use the term go down into Egypt and coming up out of Egypt. And if we know anything about the Nile, which is a good reference point, the Nile flows from out of, that's the Blue Nile flows from out of Ethiopia down through Sudan into Egypt. And the same for the White Nile flow from in the region of Uganda down into Egypt, right? Good. So that prove that Abraham actually went down when he was going into Egypt, and when he was returning to where his tent was before, he was actually going up an elevation, right? So now we're going to look for Hebron, and here it is, Hebron. Yeah. There the sticker, South Africa, Hebron, South Africa. So, however, Mamre, according to the scripture, would be a sub area of Hebron. It's just like saying Kingston, Jamaica. You know, Kingston as a sub-area of Jamaica. Or you could say Montego Bay, St. James, Montego Bay. Montego Bay being the sub of St. James or the capital, whatever you want to say. I'm not saying that Mamre was the capital. It's just a sub-region of Hebron. During colonization, they altered the borders of these places. So Hebron, they show you just a little spot there for Hebron, but Hebron was far bigger. In fact, Hebron would encompass Cape Town, what is known today as Cape Town, biblical Mamre, right? Good. So this is proof that Abraham actually was living on the continent of Africa, and that the scripture is about us, the Africans, and no one else, not those people, not those Europeans that was migrated to Palestine by England and America, but rather that we, Ham's descendants, and we're going to go into that right away, because here we are with Mount Ararat. That take us back to Noah's time. Now we know that there are other places, I think it's in Turkey, that they have a mountain that they call Mount Ararat, and they claim that that's the mountain where the ark was, and they have a whole heap of story around that. Because the whole aim is, is to keep us confused, to prevent us from knowing who we are and who we belong to. Because when we find out, it's going to be a total change. And most of us, if not all of us, will want to go back home, because you will never feel at home anywhere else than at home. You understand? So this is Mount Ararat. I guess where the ark was, after the flood. Now, it would be so funny that Noah would leave here and go somewhere else to live. Because, as the scripture said, that he embarked from the ark, and, the whole thing about building an altar, make an offering, and so forth and so on. He and his children came off, and it would be natural for them to live there. They wouldn't have reason to leave there, because everything that they need was on the ark. They would need to leave there to go somewhere else to live. So it just fate, should I say, Sunini lead Abraham back into the general area where his forefather. Is it so? Sometimes I get mixed up with that. Yeah, where his forefather Noah would actually lived. Anyhow, now Noah has 3 sons. Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Now, I won't be going too much in the scripture right now. I can, because as you know, Ham's land, the whole world. And they're glad to do it because they claim that Ham was cursed, the black man, and this land mass here is Ham's land. And I agree that this is Ham's land, but Ham was not cursed. It was his firstborn son, Canaan, which occupy this general area of the continent. And it later became the promised land, because the land of Canaan was promised to Abraham and his descendants. So when they came here, when Abraham came here, or rather when he reached at River Jordan, the entire land was promised to him, all of Canaan's land. Before he reached there, rather, as you know, Terah determined to go to the land of Canaan. And then further after his death, Hanani appeared unto Abraham and tell him to go into Canaan and that he will give him this land. You know, so really, this is Canaan's land. Now, the Democratic Republic of Congo is known as Zaire, historically. Now, here we find Zaire province, and as you can see here, Angola, right at the border of DRC Congo. But Zaire was never a little area. Zaire would encompass all of this area, because this is also Congo. They have DRC and they have the Republic of Congo, something like that. But it would encompass some of this area. Congo was a vast place, maybe all the way down to here, could be all the way down to South Africa. It was a vast area, really. So the entire area was known as Zaire. And we read that, yes, I think it's in Kings or something to that. Don't hold me at that. I don't remember exactly. Yeah, but as we know, notice here, Zaire is just a province, just a little area in Angola. You understand? Yeah, Democratic Republic of the Congo. You understand? So, yeah, this is where Abraham went. And this is where, you know, all the biblical story with our Messiah, as you can see, we have here, as you know, the famous Jordan River, where he went, and John was there as well, baptizing. Bethlehem, house of food. We have here Etwa, or they translate this as Ephata in the scripture. The original name was Etwa, and this is where Benjamin was born. His real name was Benoni, as you can see here, Benoni. Go back in the scripture, use a strong concordance, and you will prove that his mother named him Benoni before she passed, you know. And again, we have here, oh, this is Port St. John. This is for another time. And then we have here also, oh, that's the other river. We'll go into that some other time. Not dealing with that now. Yeah. Good. This is where Jordan. We have Jordan here, as we know. And they are in their approximate area, as the scripture said that they would be. Right? Bethel, Ararat, Gaza province, that has to do with Samson. We have the Maun, that's the cave of Maun, as you know the story about David and Jonathan, when Saul was pursuing David, you know. Oba with the meteorites. You know the story about those soldiers of Sunni. They were hungry and they didn't have enough food in their camp, and they decided that it's better to be prisoners than to starve to death. And on their way, maybe I'm mixing up this story. I'm mixing up the story here, but yeah, this Oba thing is where the hailstone fall from heaven to kill these opposition army of Sunnis people. Yeah. So yes, this is really the land of promise. I want to find Jerusalem. Where is Jerusalem again? It's not up here. This is Sudan. Uh, Bethlehem, Toa, Bethel, Bethlehem, Hebron, Jerusalem. Now they reduce Jerusalem to a little spot. We can zoom in and Jerusalem. I'm going to show you the true size of Jerusalem when I'm done. Or try my best to. Here it is. Here is Jerusalem. This is Jerusalem. On the continent. Not in the Middle East. Not where those Europeans are. Those Zionists. No. Jerusalem is on the continent. But they reduce it to this size. Now I'm going to show you the size, or attempt to show you the size of the true Jerusalem. The true size of Jerusalem. If my memory serves me right, here we are with Botswana, Namibia, Zimbabwe, South Africa. Now Jerusalem spans these 4 countries. The true Jerusalem, the border is still there, the wall, a part of the wall is still there. Can find it, I think most of it is in Zimbabwe. Don't hold me at it, but yeah, here we are. This is the true size of Jerusalem. It would span Zambia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, and a portion of South Africa. Now, I'm not saying it span any of the entire country, but portions of all these countries. That's the true size of Jerusalem, you know. And as you see, we get it as a little spot. As a little spot. We'll go into Port St. John some other time. Alright? Yeah. But this is it for now. I hope I make myself clear, you know.